You know, there are some things that men just don't say. There are some things that we keep to ourselves because we think it's going to be easier that way. We think that if we give people our problems, we become a burden. We don't want to be or sound like a victim. So we end up keeping a lot of stuff in. And naturally, over time, that stuff builds up. It becomes a part or a way that we just cope. It's our coping mechanism in life. And so, as you know, once you start a pattern, once you build something, it's very hard for you to break that pattern because it becomes you. It becomes your, not your release, but it becomes your way of dealing with stuff. And in fact, some extent of it is a release, but it's a release in your own world, which means that you get to control that yourself. And when there's so much uncertainty going on in a man's life, they will do anything to get control. And they'll also do anything to remove the fear of uncertainty and the lack of control. And so we find ourselves becoming just a different bloke, a different man to who we know that we should be. And a lot of the time, it's not because we want to sabotage ourselves. It's not because we want to destroy ourselves. It's not because we want to work against ourselves. It's because normally it's the only way that we know works for us. It's the only time that we can feel peace within us is when we don't talk about it, when we keep it to ourselves, when we know that we can control. But the moment a man decides to change that, he has to step into the fear of judgment, of conflict, internal conflict. He then has to put himself out and validate whether his problems are worthy of a problematic life or whether they're just fears that intrinsically he needs to deal with better. And it becomes very confusing of what to do next. And it's just much safer to keep things in. But when you keep things in, they fester, they build up, they create momentum in the wrong way. And before you know it, you're questioning the way that you do things. You're questioning your life. You're questioning your existence. You're questioning your legacy. You're questioning whether you're a great dad, whether you've got what it takes. You're questioning your own belief in yourself. Because that's what truth does. It makes you question your decisions. It makes you face yourself. And if you run from the truth and you find it easier to keep running, you never get really to the cause of what's going on at your core because you just don't face yourself. You're not willing to face yourself. And as the old saying goes, the truth will set you free, and it absolutely does. But it takes a long time to remove those shackles. It takes a long time to step into that arena, I suppose, as Brené Brown says it so well, the arena of courage and of vulnerability, and to be comfortable there and operate there as your most true, authentic self, without judgment, without comparison, without sabotage. It's not easy to do that. And I'm talking on this subject today from personal experience, but also now just reflecting on my coaching career of 10 years. 10 years. I can't remember the last time I stuck to anything for 10 years. And my mum always used to say to me, Tim, you need a trade, boy. You need to get some form of trade behind you, plumbing, electrician, something that you can fall back on that people are always going to need. And because I used to jump from job to job. And I know why that was now, because I was trying to find my place in the world that would validate all of my insecurities, but also my passions and my skills. And coaching has become that for me personally. And when I'm sitting down with all different types of men from all different walks of life, but all with an underlining pattern, I found out a lot about men. I found out a lot about what hurts us, what makes us feel less appreciated, what makes us feel like we want to go off the rails, what makes us feel like we've got progress in our lives. And it all does stem back to one area. And it's just being really honest with yourself about how you're feeling, where you're at, why possibly that is. And only then, when you've got that level of self-awareness, can you start to then put the next steps in, which is alignment, trying to align yourself to those values that got lost somewhere along the way through trauma, experiences, worry, concern, grief. You know, the ones that you had as a little boy, you know, the things that you used to love and enjoy. And it's funny, you know, when you always go back to those things, you always feel the most excited. When you go back to adventure and exploration and growth and excitement and joy and connection and love and being present, all of these things, they were a given when we were younger. They were really easy to find and to tap into because life it wasn't as complex then. But as you move through the gears and you become more, I suppose, as a human being, you end up acquiring more experiences. And some of those experiences, they're not always good ones. And so, you know, the brain works against us because it likes nice, simple, easy, familiar certainty. And even when our thought process is detrimental to our own growth, our own progress, the brain wants to go there anyway because it doesn't need to do as much work when it doesn't have to change. That's why change can be such a phenomenal part of life. That's why transformation is liberating, because it takes quite a lot to go through a process of change, especially the older you get, because, you know, more spots on the leopard, as they say. And it takes more. It takes a different level of resilience and tenacity to want to change in that way and push yourself and challenge yourself and grow and take risks and put yourself into uncomfortable positions, especially when you bring children into the world. You know, you can become really risk adverse and, you know, you can step on eggshells a lot in your own life and don't really do what you know is required for you to get to the next level. So your children can experience that man that has taken himself to the next level. And although we know we need to be role models, mentors, you know, we need to be support, love, all of those things for our children, we sometimes get it wrong because we know that there's a deeper truth that if we unlock it, we're going to need to do some work. And that's all right, but you've got to be ready for the work. You've got to be ready to dial your life up to a next level, and you've got to want it. You've got to really want to take your life to the next level, because as I said, the older you get, the easier it is to make excuses for why you're not where you're at and why you shouldn't take that risk, why you shouldn't back yourself, invest in yourself, why you shouldn't go and explore and bring that, you know, that little young boy back in, the adventure, the happiness, the little, what's the right word to use here? The little cheeky version of you. We lose that because everything gets a bit serious. Everything becomes a burden, and 10 years go, 5 years go, and we're like, shit, have I arrived here? Surely, this can't be it. Surely there's got to be more to life. But these are the things that men don't really talk about. They talk to me about these things because I'm in a very humble position to be able to hold safe places for men in that seat over there, in fact, to really unpack where they're actually at. And it's funny, I created this space, this whole studio, this setup that you're sitting in now, so I could give my clients and men a different voice. And I know that if you're a man and you're watching this video, you would have sat in those Tesco car parks for a half hour as time just goes past like that, with the weight and the weight of the world on your shoulders, Money, responsibility, keeping the wife happy, making sure that your body's great and it's represents who you are. Your kids' school fees, all the bills that are going out. Is your business growing? It is constant responsibility. But we do this and take this on because deep down, we have got the ability to do and achieve all of these things, but not without a system. And most importantly, not without alignment. But alignment, it comes from the truth. You have to first unlock the truth within you in order for you to feel that you can move to the next step of alignment. And only then can you start to really map out what your life should be like. And you can't execute on a life that you're not true or truthful about with yourself, because you just end up executing on the wrong game plan. You end up doing the wrong things. That's why so many people, they get to a certain stage where they tell themselves a few truths, right? They get honest with themselves a little bit, but just with the bits that they're comfortable with, really. Not the harsh, the tough, the really, the really hard truths that are going to create, of course, the biggest breakthroughs. And, we don't often do that. But when we do it, we can then start to create a plan based around now the alignment that we've got and the truth that we told ourselves, because self-awareness is always just stage one in any form of change or transformation. It's not stage 4. It's not the end. Being aware is amazing, especially when you're unaware, especially when you haven't really sat down and got clear about why you do what you do. You know that you do things a certain way, but you're not really sure of the driving force behind them. You haven't taken the time to unpack that properly. And when you get to that phase, it's a beautiful place to be, because you can finally start to understand yourself a little bit more. But understanding yourself isn't the end goal. Executing on what you've found out about yourself through that truth, and then the alignment of what your life should be like, that's when you get everlasting change. That's when you never look back. That's when you finally break through those things that you thought was you for such a long time, that you believed was your story. And when you change your story, everything about your life changes. You change, because you go from, this is who I am, this is how life is, and this is the reason for it, to, those were all lies, but I've been telling myself those things for such a long time that they have become who I am. And when you shift that, and when you find out why you've been telling yourself those stories, where that comes from, and then you challenge that, and then you change it through challenge, you realize that there is a version of you, a man within you, that has been dying to come out. But he couldn't come out until you got honest with yourself. You didn't really deserve to see him. because you wasn't doing the work to uncover him, to have him in your life. You wasn't sacrificing what you needed to do to unlock that guy. You know, I've got to positions in my life before where I've questioned, like I'm sure you do, how have I got here? How have I ended up in this situation? You know, I'm sure we've all had that conversation with ourselves at one stage or another in our lives, in our careers, in our relationships. And asking yourself why is great because, you know, it allows us to do the deeper work. But how becomes even more important. How are we going to change this about me now? And then what do I need to do next? What is the very next step? Because if you haven't got those things, the why, the how, and the what, you'll just keep in a loop of self-awareness. And I'm sure you've got friends, colleagues, maybe parents, siblings, you know, people that you're married to, that they know where they are. They know probably why they are where they are, but they're not doing anything to change it. And you almost want to grab them and say, this is great that you've got here, but there's more, way more. And you only unlock that more is when you start to ask yourself, well, how do I do this? How do I change it? And what do I need to do? What do I need to do next? Putting those steps in. So look, I know that many of you are going through struggle right now in your own way, in your own world, in your own life, with your own set of meanings around the things that you're going through. You know, one person's catastrophe is somebody else's like running water. But it's all relevant. It's all relevant to you. Your challenges, your hurdles, your obstacles are all relevant to you, just like they are to me. What's prominent in my world and the meaning that I place on those things, well, they're relevant to me because they're in my world, and likewise of you. And so I hope this video has helped you a little bit into maybe creating some different questions up here, some things that maybe you can start to change about what you do with what you know, because that's the real instigator to change. Start using what you know rather than just knowing. I hope this video has helped you today. Please subscribe to this channel. If you've enjoyed this video, please comment, let somebody know, share it, WhatsApp it to them, a link of this video or something like that, just so we can start to get this message out to the men that need it. And I will continue to serve you and do these videos. And the more subscribers I get, the more impact these videos are gonna make. And you know, it could be just you subscribing and sharing that ends up really helping somebody that would have never have watched a video like this in their lives, and for the first time, it could have got them on the journey to change. Thanks for watching.